Just wanted to welcome everyone again to our February session with HR Biz Solutions and Lynn Talbot. She's got a great presentation for us today in terms of getting your books ready for tax season. Not giving tax advice today, but definitely going to be going over how you need to get organized, and I'll let Miss Lynn go through all of that. But as usual, we are building community through the arts with Arts Build. That is our mission. And we're so glad to be here today with an organization like HR Biz Solutions, who is serving our mission support grantees. And we're so glad that this is going to be offered to the public as well. So if for some reason you miss a little bit of this, or you've got multiple Zooms going on, kind of like I do this week, you can go back and catch this on our YouTube page. We will post this not too long after we finish presenting. So with that, just wanted to remind again, we've got next Thursday and the following Thursday as more shared services workshops, but I'm going to let Miss Lynn take it away, and I'll talk to you guys about that at the end now.
Oh, great. Well, I hope we have some more people join us, because I'm like, I love to give out all this knowledge. And I, whenever I teach something, I usually get a big, oh my gosh, you know, this helped me. So, so keep admitting people when you see them, Amy, and I'll get started. So my name's Lynn Talbot, and I'm a certified pro advisor. I have my own bookkeeping business, and we support probably about 30 nonprofits in town. I actually have a nonprofit in Florida and a nonprofit in Wisconsin as well. And so we do QuickBooks, and we teach and train QuickBooks. So we go into the nonprofits and we show them best practices and processes and things like that. So we like to smooth out everything and make it, you know, make it easy for you guys. So, and I'll try to keep it to, I've got a lot of data. I always like add more data than, you know, I think I can go over. So if I go a little fast, I'll try to open my chat up over here too. I'm not really sure. But Amy, if somebody is asking a question or something, just let me know, or you can, since there's just a few of us, you can certainly unmute and just and ask it. But I will go pretty quickly, and at the end I'll take questions, whatever's going on. But if I go through something too quick, just let me know. So here's our team.
We've just heard from Ms. Flo that this is an opportune moment for her and her organization because their accountant retired this year. So new business,
yes.
Lynn.
Yeah, so, you know, you have to learn it. It's like they just throw you in the fire, don't they, Flo? And it's like, you know, here you go, you got to learn it. And it may not be, you know, your skill set, you know, because a lot of you are artists, and that maybe, you know, you didn't go to school and learn bookkeeping. So I'll try to keep that in mind too. So our office is located in Red Bank. That's where I am right now. And we've got a staff of 10 trainers, and that's, like I say, that's what we do. So our philosophy about QuickBooks, and when I talk today, I'm mainly talking about QuickBooks Online. If you're not on QuickBooks Online, you do need to talk to me about how to get on that for very, very cheap. We have a special rate for just $75 a year, and you can get on QuickBooks Online. So hopefully everybody's on it, because QuickBooks Desktop is not the platform that is kind of working very well for nonprofits anymore. But I always say, you know, stop entering data and start managing data. Let QuickBooks go out and grab all the information that you need. It grabs it from the credit card. It grabs it from maybe your website if people have making donations. Maybe you've got a donor management system. It can grab it from there and sync it right into QuickBooks. So you don't hand enter anything. You're just grabbing the data and putting it in QuickBooks. So that's our goal for you, is to figure out how to manage that data, how to get it to come in so you can manage it and stop hand entering. You're not going to write checks. You're not going to do any of that. You're going to accept the bank feeds. And we'll talk a little bit about how to get QuickBooks Online to work better for you. So, you know the right tools for your accounting software. And a lot of you have CRMs that maybe you accept donations in. And if you do, that's great, because then when they hit QuickBooks, they'll just go to a donation line that you've categorized whatever it is that they're donating to. There's a lot of applications that QuickBooks Online will sync with, and some sync better than others. So some of you may have PayPal on the back of your website, or you may do a big program where you go out and you're doing something and people are signing up and you're swiping their little card that's going to PayPal. Well, PayPal's a great app for QuickBooks. It acts like a bank. It syncs it in. It tells you who paid, tells you the fees, and we want you to be able to use that data rather than enter your data. So the good thing about a nonprofit, which I love, is that, you have to be transparent about all the expenses and the income as well. You've got to, your treasurer needs to know it. The board of directors needs to know it. The IRS needs to know it when it's time to file that 990. And by managing the data and saying, look, this data came from a known source, and it's correct, and I'm kind of tying my sources all together to manage the data. It does bring everything more transparent. You don't have to go to the end of the year and have the IRS or have the CPA say, well, run me a report in PayPal and give me all the money you had in PayPal, and then run me a report in QuickBooks, and then ask, well, why are they different? And everybody's like, well, I don't know. We're just over here popping stuff in QuickBooks. We don't know. Well, we're going to help set you up with a process that helps you merge those two, so that every single day, not at the end of the month or the end of the year, every single day, that data is updated and it's correct, and anybody can run a report. In a nonprofit, you'll often have different users, like I said, a treasurer, the board, the director, maybe the bookkeeper in the firm, or maybe you wear all those hats, and so you need to get in it. But anybody that gets in it, you want them to be able to see the data and be transparent about it. So I always just say, learn how to leverage those applications that you can sync in for your business. And QuickBooks Online is a true cloud app. Is a true cloud application. So you can get to it on your phone, you can get to it from anywhere. And it just means saving a lot of time. If you have a desktop, you can only open it at your desktop, or you have to remote into that and bump whoever's on the computer off, to be able to look at it. So, and we always say time is money, So QuickBooks Online loves apps. There's a lot of plugin. It has an open API, and that just means that if you have a certain CRM that you use, maybe it's an older one, maybe it's something someone built for you a long time ago, QuickBooks Online has an open kind of back door, and it allows a developer to build that sync between those. So that's why it's so cool. You can go to apps.intuit.com right here, and it will, you can see all the different apps, and I'll go over some of the CRMs for nonprofits at the end. So you can connect anywhere. It decreases the amount of paper that you need. So this is really interesting. Used to, for nonprofits, when I first started 10 years ago, I'd go over to a nonprofit. I don't care what nonprofit it was. There was stacks and stacks and stacks of boxes and file cabinets of a picture of every check they've ever written since 1992, every report and books and binders, and you don't have to do any of that anymore. It's not required that you do that. You do not have to make copies of checks no matter what anybody tells you, because all of that stuff is filed electronically, and you can, if someone needs it, they could go and get it. So you could run a nonprofit. A lot of people do right from their home, just someone that is got a small nonprofit and doesn't need a physical building. And you can actually run your nonprofit right from your phone if you want, So you don't need all this paperwork. And it, like I said, it automatically downloads from the bank feeds and the credit card every night. And you can have multiple users at the same time. So you can be in it and the director can be in it, and you won't even know, and you won't even bother each other. Unlike QuickBooks Desktop, where only one person can be in it, at a time. So QuickBooks is updated continuously all day, all night. It's updating. And if you've used QuickBooks Online for a while, you've noticed that in the past 6 months, just a plethora of additions have been added to QBO. Like, it has exploded in the last 6 months, and there's lots of report options and there's the app that you can do your receipt. There's a mileage app. There's all kinds of things that have been added. You can, especially in the reports function, which for nonprofits is nice, because people are always saying, can you run me a report by program? How much do we make at the golf tournament? And you're like, well, I don't know. I can run a P&L, but let me see. So we're going to talk about that. How can you run a profit and loss by program? And so you can give people the information that they want. And also you can look and see, did we meet our goals? So QuickBooks works in any of the browsers. It is sort of built for, I don't know if that's the right word for it, for Chrome. And Chrome, it works best in Chrome. And so we tell people just, try to use Chrome when you can. The other browsers work fine, but if QuickBooks gets an update, it's going to update in Chrome before it's going to update in these other ones. And I always tell them, if you're on Mac, Safari's fine. You don't have to download Chrome. But if it starts to act up, if you're in it and it says, you're trying to go to a page and it just won't load, or it says you don't have access to this page, or oops, we have a problem, just log out, log into Chrome, and it will be fine. So we tell people, don't freak out if you suddenly can't get into it in your browser. Just move over to Chrome, it'll be fine. All right, how's the pace going so far? Hopefully you're learning a lot. So tips for the newcomer, one of it is to, keep it simple. There is a sample file in QuickBooks, and I'm going to show you where that is right now. Let me see if I can hit escape. And I've got QuickBooks pulled up right here. Sorry, I got to get rid of this bar. There we go. I don't know where to go. Right there. There's my QuickBooks. So this is a sample file, and unfortunately I don't have a nonprofit sample file, but it's still pretty similar. And we were looking for how to find the sample file. So if you are in your regular file, you can go to this gear icon. Now I'm not in it right now, and there's a little button here that says sample file, and you can just open this sample file. If not, you can just Google, if you have a simple start, you can just Google sample file QuickBooks, and it'll take you to this Craig's Design and Landscape. And you can do anything you want in here. And when you log out and log back in, it just goes back to where it was. And so I tell people, if you're like, oh, I want to do a recurring invoice, but I'm afraid to do that in my QuickBooks, well, go over here and do it in the sample file. And then you can, try it out first. That's what's good. And I always tell people to hide things that they don't need. This little thing is bugging me. Let me move it down here. So I go back from the current slide. So you can hide things that you don't need. You can make them inactive. In QuickBooks, if you have on your chart of accounts, let's just say you're cleaning up the chart of accounts because your nonprofit's been around forever and there's been all these different people in it. And next thing you know, there's 72 income accounts and you really only have 4. And you're like, what do I do with all this stuff? And golf income, we haven't had a golf tournament in 10 years. You're just going to hide it. So you can go to the end of that. When you look at your chart of accounts, on the right-hand corner, there's a drop-down menu and it says edit or delete. And when you delete it in QuickBooks, it really doesn't go away. I wish they wouldn't use the word delete. So it just says, do you want me to make this inactive when you click the delete button? And you're like, yes, so that if you need it in the future or you need to run a report for a long time ago, it will just pop right back up. So it never really goes away, you just make it inactive. There's a live community feature, and that's just up in the upper right-hand corner. It's a little picture of a outline of a head, and that live community feature is good. It's you can ask it any question that you want. I'm going to show it to you again real quick. So right there is the, well, it used to, in the sample file, it's not in here. Let's see if this experts. So in some files, it'll say my expert, others, it'll just say, community, and you can ask it anything that you want. I'm not getting the menu. There's a little menu thing there, and you can get anything you want. There's a help. There we go. There's the help. So now they call it help. Sorry, they do change the names on it a lot. It used to say live community, and you can ask anything here. And I guarantee you other people have asked that same thing. So if you're just like, how do I delete a file? How do I delete a chart of accounts? You can do that, and it will walk you through how to do that. And that's really a nice little feature, to have. and then code everything you can to a bank rule. And I'll show you how to duplicate a page too. I don't know if anybody here knows how to duplicate a page, but if you, so see, I've got this, let's just say I want to run here a profit and loss. This is just with this Craig's landscaping, but now I want to go over and see something. I'm going to go up to this, all the way to the top here inside this little box, and I'm going to right click, and there's a little tab that says duplicate. Now in other browsers, it may say something like copy or something like that, but generally you're going to be able to right click and you're going to find duplicate, and it's going to create 2 tabs for me. This is so helpful if you need to toggle back and forth between things, or you need to keep that, you need to keep your profit and loss up, and like maybe we need to keep our balance sheet and we're going to work over here, but we want to pop back over to the profit and loss so that we can see what we're doing and how it's affecting the profit and loss. So having these tabs open is nice. And when I'm working in your books, I'll often have 10 tabs open. I'll be doing journal entries and then going back to make sure that it's proper, it's properly posting into the profit and loss the way I want it to, and into the accounts that I want it to. So that's how you duplicate. That's my little trick of the day. Hopefully that helps some people out. A lot of times in QuickBooks, you do have a save button in the lower right-hand corner. If you're on a Mac and you're trying to work in Chrome, sometimes that save button is just below the surface, and you have to kind of, take that little right-hand thing and scroll down a little bit, and then you see the save button. And I tell people that because they get frustrated. They're like, I can't save this. And I was like, oh, you have to scroll down before you see the save, or adjust the settings so that you can see the whole, the whole screen on your screen. So that's something there to know about. All right, moving on. So if you do not have QuickBooks for nonprofits, the QBO special, you can go to TechSoup. It's just called TechSoup.org, and most of you hopefully know about that. And you can get Online Plus for just $75 a year. This is $75 a month if you just go to the Intuit website. But TechSoup, they sell it to TechSoup to help nonprofits. And then the one over here is an advanced subscription. So if you need, more than 5 users, and you need, you're more than like 2 or 3 million, and you've got federal grants and really big time, you're probably going to need the QuickBooks Online Advanced, because it has special reporting for nonprofits and for those government grants. That's really nice. So that's where you go, TechSoup.org, if you don't have it already. And a question we get a lot of times, and you guys, probably already know this, or maybe you have somebody at your firm that's already, taking care of it. If your nonprofit brings in over 500,000 in revenues in the state of Tennessee, then you must submit an audit annually by a CPA. And now your board may have different requirement levels, because maybe there's a certain grant they get that required it at 300,000. Maybe a little foundation says, well, we're not going to give you the 300,000 until you have a formal audit. And so 500 is the absolute minimum in the state of Tennessee, but the board or other, donors may have different restrictions too. And that audit has to be independent of the treasurer, the director. They can't be on your board. Your treasurer, if your treasurer is a CPA, they cannot do the audit. It has to be completely independent, and they cannot donate the audit. You have to pay them for the audit, because it's seen as, if they're donating it, it sort of seems as if, I don't know, improprietary or something. So, audits are expensive. They're generally going to be $6,000 or $7,000 if you have to have a formal audit. But you're not required to unless you have 500,000 in revenue or otherwise. If you make less than 50K, if you bring in your revenue less than 50K, if you're just teeny tiny, you can file what's called a 990N. It is literally what used to be a postcard. Now you go online and file it. They don't do the postcard anymore, but it used to be a postcard. It said, did you bring in less than 50K in 2020? And then you check yes, and it says, please sign below. And that's all you did. They didn't care about anything else, but once you hit over that, you can file the 990, just the regular 990 form. So, whoops, why it's going backwards. So that's the thing there. So your income accounts, you know, depending on how your nonprofit is set up and how you take in income, you'll have memberships and dues, and then you could have pledges and donations, either items or, you know, money or service. Some people can donate their time. You can also have fundraising, and you can have grants or endowments. But the important thing to know is that you do have to separate out grants and funding when you're reporting on your 990. Those have to be separate line items than just memberships and dues. The other thing about pledges is, I don't know if any of you have pledges or accept pledges. Pledges are something that we try to tell people, don't accept pledges. Just you know, if they pay and they join or they make a donation, great. If you accept pledges have to be counted as income for your 990. And you all know in a nonprofit that, you know, not everybody comes through with their pledges. So you sort of end up with a little bit of a skewed, skewed data there. But like, think of somebody huge like United Way. I mean, they have that's what it started for, was because they said, well, you have to count all your pledges as income, even though those pledges might not come in for a whole year or 6 months or something. They might not come into the next calendar year. They are required to count them. So if you offer formal pledges and someone, you know, maybe it's some kind of entity is pledging, you have to count that as income. And also, if somebody gives you a restricted donation, like a lot of times churches will do this, you'll say, look, I'm donating the money and I want it to go to, you know, the children's choir or whatever. You are required to restrict that donation and take that money and put it in a slot and spend it, and then show how you spent it. Now, your donation might come in December and you don't spend it till January, February. That's fine. Maybe you don't spend it for 6 months. Or if you have a capital campaign, it could be a lot longer than that. So you just have to know that you'll have a restricted account too, that just says restricted donations. And you may have 2 or 3 if people donate something and they write on there, this is restricted for this purpose. We encourage people to just, please just give us the money and let us use it, you know, wherever we need it, because we promise we'll be, you know, good stewards of it. And that helps out a lot. But you are required to line item that out if you do get that. So a few years ago, FAFSA came up with some new tax laws for nonprofits. Really hadn't been, you know, reviewed or updated in a long time. And the major new rule is that now, instead of just, you do have to report your income and your expenses, but they want the income and expenses also broken out by program. Because as a nonprofit, you're supposed to be donating money, time, effort, something. You've got something that you're donating, and you've got a program that you're supporting, right? If you're supporting arts, or if you're supporting, you know, I know people have after school care, whatever it is that you're supporting, you've got to give that program a name, and you have to say, this is the money we brought in for that program, and this is how we spent it. And the reason is that helps the state of Tennessee decide, wow, you know, what if there was a company that, whatever, they were teaching children to read or something, and they took in $200,000, and the director took $200,000 in their pay. And, you know, all the other expenses that happened were just kind of overhead, and they had one little camp where they taught people to read. You know, the IRS, I mean, yeah, the state of Tennessee is going to say, you know, this really doesn't meet the nonprofit rules. You have a nonprofit, and just 100% of it went to overhead. Like, you need to show how much is going to your program. So it's just important to know how to report by program. And if you have a CPA reporting for you, then they know how to do that. You don't have to worry about it. But in QuickBooks, there's a way to do that. So it's kind of nice to get in the habit of putting things to the program, putting expenses to the programs where they belong. And then at the end of the year, you can allocate income however the CPA feels that it's supposed to be allocated. You may just allocate it straight across, or look, this is our biggest program. 80% of what we do goes in this program, but we do some outreach and we do some teaching and we do some whatever, and so those will make up a little tiny percentage as well. But you do have to disclose the method that you use to allocate those expenses. And of course, we can use QuickBooks for that too. You're going to use classes in QuickBooks. It's called class tracking. And if you don't have, you have to have QuickBooks Online Plus in order to have class tracking. And if you have that, I'll show you in just a minute how to track your programs. And we call that, QuickBooks just calls it class tracking, but we can call it program tracking. Track, where did our expenses go? And you're going to assign those expenses to a certain program. So you do have to be able to show on your balance sheet your net assets without restrictions and your net assets with restrictions. So if somebody has donated some money and maybe you have a capital campaign, you're going to build a building, though you have to show that these are restricted funds. I can't use them right now until the building comes up. And they just want to see how much you have for restricted funds and that you're not grabbing those restricted funds and using it for daily operations. So any questions so far? I feel like I'm flying through it. Flo or Sally, do y'all have any questions?
I'm not seeing any that are being posted.
Okay, well, I hope I'm keeping everybody interested or entertained at least,
No, you are. I'm learning a lot, actually.
Yeah, I know. We'll learn a lot. So, all right, well, I'll just keep on rocking and rolling then.
Please,
all right,
yes.
So a word about undeposited funds. Sometimes when people get into QuickBooks, they see this undeposited funds and it just totally throws them off. So undeposited funds appears as a default count in the chart of accounts. If you were trying to delete it, it would pop right back up and say, you can't delete this, QuickBooks is going to make it, stay in there. So what that account does is it temporarily holds your payments that you have received until you go to the bank to make a deposit. And I have a little picture of a little deposit bag. So just think of undeposited funds. If you're like me, and I can think in pictures sometimes better, think of that undeposited funds account as your little bank bag. And you are going to accept payments. Maybe people are writing checks, or you're going somewhere and you got like 10 payments. They're all for $50 each. Well, you're going to take all those checks or money and put it in the bank bag, zip it up, drive to the bank and make a $500 deposit. You're not making a $50, you're making one deposit. So QuickBooks deposits have to match the bank deposits. You can't go deposit 50, 50, 50, 50, 50, and then go to the bank and deposit 500 because QuickBooks is like, well, I don't have a 500. I got all these 50s and I can't add, it can't find the 10 that make it up, So the undeposited funds is where you temporarily hold them. So you go to accept a payment, you accept a payment to where? To undeposited funds, and they build up in there. And then when you go to make a deposit, you open that window of undeposited funds and you look at the checks and you go, yep, check, 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 check. $500 made a deposit. Then the next day, the $500 comes from the bank because it's going to tell you what happened yesterday at the bank. And it says, oh, I have a $500 deposit, and it matches it up. And we're all happy when we see that little match button in QuickBooks, right? Because that's what we want. We want the green match button that says, you did something right, Lynn. Congratulations, So you can either receive a payment through the payments window, or if you click on sales receipt, a sales receipt in QuickBooks is a payment and an invoice at the same time. In other words, if you were like at, it's kind of like, running through your register, here's a receipt. The transaction and the invoice all happened at the same time. And that payment you have to direct to undeposited funds until you're ready to make the deposit. And that might be some confusing for some people, but if you've been doing QuickBooks for a while, that's a no-brainer for you. And if you're setting up your chart of accounts, I just tell people, keep it simple. Nonprofits have this terrible, I don't know what it is, habit of just creating this enormous chart of accounts that just doesn't need to happen. We went into, we were helping out Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and they've been around, I don't know, 100 years. So you can only imagine what their chart of accounts looks like after 100 years and literally 90 different CPAs getting their hand in it, So when we work with them, I said, let's work together and let's consolidate and merge these accounts, and let's get a chart of accounts that's up to date and works for you, like is realistic, not all the stuff that happened in the 20s that we don't do anymore, So you can do the same thing and just keep it simple. You do not have to, every time somebody, sets up a new income account or set up a new expense account, because on the 990 form, there's really only maybe 25 expense areas, and everything else you've created extra. And so it just kind of needs to be like a sub account of the main account. So if you have, here's an example. So one of the ones, in the 990, when you set up QuickBooks, it gives you the chart of accounts that needs to be filed for the 990. So the first one's advertising, advertising. So if you have to do your website, you might have your website, you can just book it straight to advertising. But if you want to section it out, you do it as a sub account of advertising. The same thing, maybe you have to do business cards or flyers, then you can do business cards as a sub account of advertising. Don't do advertising this, because they're all over the place in the chart of accounts. They're alphabetical. And so you end up scrolling forever trying to find, where it is for advertising, where you've put it, Same thing with insurance. You can have life insurance, health insurance, workers' comp, liability, all kinds of insurance, but you're going to sub under the insurance one. So keep it simple and just add what you need, but do it as a sub account rather than a whole nother account that maybe ends up getting kind of confused. Well, I don't know whether to click insurance or life insurance. Oh, I see, it's that insurance. Well, I don't know. They came together on the bill, so I don't know where to put them, So, and I always tell people a category is not a vendor name. You don't go in and say, money from Coca-Cola. It's not. It's either a grant or it's a donation, whatever it is. A category is not a vendor name, so you can't just go and put vendor names in there as a chart of accounts, because 990 is like, we don't have a vendor name called Coca-Cola. We have one called donations, and so you need to use the ones that are proper. You can always break it down if it's something so super important, but most of the time it's not so super important that it needs its own, chart of accounts. So, okay, how to merge two accounts. I'm going to show you how to do this, because if you just heard me talk and you're like, oh my God, I need to go through my chart of accounts because I have a 6-page profit and loss, and you don't even know where half the accounts came from, and you're sort of scared to delete them because you might not be the one making those decisions. You can talk to the director and talk to the CPA and say, can we merge these accounts? And merging two accounts just means, look, I have two accounts that somehow somebody created a long time ago, and I really don't need it broken down anymore because we might only have one item in there the whole year. I'd like to merge those two. And so I'll show you how to do that real quick. So let me pop back over to the account here, and down here we're going to go to the chart of accounts, and I'm just clicking accounting and chart of accounts, and I'll have to put my glasses on because I know this will be tiny for me to look at. So in this chart of accounts, when you see these little yellow arrows, that just means that it's syncing with the bank. And there's the QuickBooks balance and there's the bank balance today. So this is today. And this is shocking that QuickBooks would give us a sample file that says your bank balance is negative 3,000. That means that something's wrong and you've overdrawn at the bank. So you would have to go look at that. But let's just say we have two accounts. Now look at all these income accounts here. I'm going to look at two things that, let's just say we don't really do sprinklers and drip system. No, I don't want to do it because that's a sub account. Let's do one that's a little easier. Okay, commissions and fees, and let's just say we don't have that anymore, but you had one little thing and you don't want to delete it because you need it to show up in the profit and loss. And so we're going to add the commissions and fees and bank charges. We're going to merge these because the commission that you had, or the fees that you had in there, maybe they were really bank charges. So we're going to go over here to edit, and this is that little drop down menu I was telling you. You can edit, or you can make it inactive, or you can run a report. That's the only three things you can do. So I'm going to edit the one called commissions and fees. And when I do that, it brings me up here and it says, what is the name? And so I'm going to change the name to the one I want it to merge with. And I can see over here that it says bank charges, and the B and the C are capitalized. It's very important that you have the right spaces and the right, little thing. So I'm going to type bank charges. Now, it does have to be the same detail type. And right here, I'm going to leave the description blank. And so let's see what happens, because I think this one has a different detail type, and I'm going to click save and I'm going to see what it tells me. So save and close. It says something's not quite right. Another account with a different detail type is always using that name. So you could use a different name, or I can change the detail type to match it. And I imagine that this one says like bank charges, probably. There we go, bank charges. So I'm going to merge these two accounts. Now I've checked to see that the detail type is the same and the name is the same. Let's click save and close. And it says, yes. Now this is the one that you want to be real careful of. This name is already being used. Would you like to merge them? And so I'm going to click yes, and it's going to merge them. It's telling me that I changed the detail type too. Then when I go back to the chart of accounts down here in the expenses, I don't have commissions and fees. They're wrapped up into here. If I were to run a report, I would see them in there now. So if you are trying to clean up your chart of accounts and you want to try to merge two things that are maybe old, you can do that. But let's just say you're going through your chart of accounts and there's just stuff there that you just don't do anymore. You can just click that drop down and say make inactive. Are you sure you want to inactivate this? And you say yes. Oh, so this one will not let me do it because he has a product or service that uses that. I will have to delete that product or service first. So let's go down here. That's like something that we don't really care about, like purchases. What is purchases? That's like a cost of goods. So we're going to make that inactive. There you go. And now it's gone. But what if I said, oh, wait a minute. I need to see that. Where did it go? This little gear icon here is super helpful. See this little button right here that says include inactive? I'm just going to click on that, and then the accounts that are inactive will populate, and we'll see that one down here that said, was it purchases? LMNOP, I don't know where it was, purchases, and he'll have the little word deleted. And then of course here it's saying make it active again or not. So that's the way that if you were interested in kind of cleaning up your chart of accounts. And the good thing about deleting it is that it's still there. If you were to like hide something and then somebody said, I need that account, then you're like, okay, never mind. You just go back, click, make it active, and you're right back to where you are. The data does not get deleted in there. When you merge the accounts, you can't unmerge them. When you merge them, it pulls the data over from the beginning. If there's data in there from 1998, it's going to pull it all in, and it's going to call it, bank charges. So any questions about that? That was just some little tips on how to help you clean up your chart of accounts, And you need to know whether you're on cash or accrual, and this is how you record your revenue. Cash just means you recognize it when it hits the bank. Accrual means you recognize it when you send out an invoice, and maybe you haven't gotten the money yet. So some nonprofits are on cash and some are on accrual, and whatever you started with is where you have to be, and you can't really change. But the reason I bring this up is that if you look on your tax return, it'll tell you right below the name, this is filed on a cash or accrual, and you have to check one of those boxes. And if you're on an accrual, then you're just going to want to make sure your QuickBooks is set to accrual, like your settings are set on accrual, because you don't want to be doing reports and not be consistent with what you're given to the tax. I mean, you might not care, but when everybody starts talking numbers at the end of the year, those numbers, a balance sheet or a profit and loss on a cash basis might look different than an accrual basis. If you send out $50,000 of invoices on December 31st on accrual, that's going to be income. And on the cash, it's not going to be. So your profit and loss could look a lot different. And so we always tell people you want to know. I'll show you real quickly where that is. It, again, in this gear icon, this is like your best friend up here. This is where you're going to go to your settings. There's a little button here that says account and settings. And it's going to ask you, it's going to take a second to populate. So this is the company tax. You're going to fill out, you're a 990. It's probably already in there. But under this advanced feature, it's going to ask you, if this is where you want to track classes, you can turn that on. You click this little edit button and you turn that class tracking on. And then this is the accounting method. This guy is on accrual. And so if you're on accrual, the reports in QuickBooks will populate on accrual. If you click it to cash, the reports will populate in cash. So it's just nice to know, right, that you're somebody will think you're really smart because you're running them on cash or accrual, and that the CPA will be like, how'd you do that? So just a little tip there. Okay, so petty cash, a lot of nonprofits, sorry about that, let me go back. A lot of nonprofits do have petty cash, and I see that they don't know how to kind of report on that. So you just create an account in QuickBooks, a bank account, and it's called petty cash or cash on hand, whatever you want to call it. Some of you, if you run a thrift shop, you might have a cash register, and that might be your petty cash. Set it up like a bank. And then if you need to spend that cash for something, because that's why you have petty cash, right? Like you need to run to the store and get some water or paintbrushes, whatever you're doing, you're going to ask for a receipt back. So the receipt dollar amount plus the cash that's in the drawer is always going to equal the amount of petty cash that you have on hand. And then when we go to enter it, like say the petty cash was $200 and then it eventually got down to $25 and somebody said, hey, we need some more petty cash. You go to the bank, you write a check for $175, you're going to deposit it into petty cash because that's kind of like a little bank. It's just your own little bank right in your little office there. And then it's not a income, right? It's just transferring it from the bank to the petty cash account. And then all of those expenses, we're going to do a journal entry and say the petty cash account paid for, office supplies, blah, 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 and then that's how you count for it. So one little last thing about class tracking, because I told you I would show you how to do class tracking, and in nonprofits, we call it program tracking, but QuickBooks just has to use this word class. And I just showed you on the gear icon, you would just check class tracking. And then once you turn it on, every time you have a check or a deposit, QuickBooks is going to say, well, what class, what program? And not everything's going to have a program. So you're going to have your classes are going to be, let's just say your programs are, you have a golf tournament fundraiser, a spaghetti dinner fundraiser, and then you do an outreach program that doesn't really raise money, but you have expenses in it. Totally fine. And so, and then you're going to have something just called like overhead or something like that, overhead, because you might get a bill for insurance or a bill for cell phones. Those aren't necessarily going to be tracked to a specific program. So you're going to put them over into the overhead. But every expense and every deposit, QuickBooks won't let you finish when you turn on class tracking and see this little button here that says, warn me when a transaction isn't assigned to a class. So if you check that button, QuickBooks is going to say, oh, you didn't put your program in there. And the little drop down menu is going to have the different programs that you have. We're just going to add the classes and do the one. So you go to the gear icon list and you can do a class list, and it's going to show you what the classes are, because you can always add classes and take classes off, programs as programs, change, you can always do that. So you'll see at the top, you're able to have, I think 40 different classes or 40 different programs. And a lot of times you don't need anywhere near 40. You're just going to have like 5. Most people are just going to have 5 or 6 major programs. Now, other ones could be sub programs of that or just miscellaneous stuff. But you're generally, some people just have 2 programs. This is what we do. This is our mission, and your program should be reflective of your mission. So when you like I say, go to the gear icon, and then and we talked a little bit about the search button. If you need to search for something in QuickBooks, just say, you're like, I don't know if I put that $200, you know, into the deposit. You can go click the search button and type in $200 here. And QuickBooks is going to go through the entire QuickBooks file and find any transaction that's $200, and it's going to list it there. And then you can click on it and find it. So the search button's kind of, it's very helpful, especially if you're reconciling and you're like, I'm off by $32. And then you're like, that sounds familiar. I just can't remember. Type in $32 and maybe somehow it got moved to like the next month. And you're like, well, there it is. I need to go redate it back to the current month so I can reconcile it. That happens a lot, you know. All right. So the chart of accounts, if you needed, this is that new button here. So we got the gear icon and the new button are the two buttons that you are generally going to be clicking on. I know I'm going fast because it's like 11. I don't even have my clock here, but I know it's a little bit after. So
11:15.
Okay, good. I was like, I'm going fast. But if you're looking for recent transactions, sometimes you'll be typing and you'll type in a check and you'll hit, you know, enter. And then you're like, wait a minute, where did it go? I think I wrote it out of the wrong checking account. What? And you're like, where did it go? Just go back to, you know, create a check. And this little thing that looks like a little clock, if you click on that, it takes you back and it'll start listing all the transactions that you put in there starting with today, and then they go backwards. So you can go and say, okay, there it is. There's that transaction, and you can click on it. You can do that in the deposit window, in the journal entry window, wherever you see that little clock, you can just click on that clock and it'll give you a list of what you just did in that window. Like, these are the checks you wrote today, and then it starts going backwards. So it's kind of cool because sometimes you're like, I cannot find this check, you know, what in the world what did I do with it, you know, and you'll find, oh, I see, I accidentally wrote it out of the savings account and it should have been the checking account. Then you can open it up, drop this down and change it to where you need to change it to. All righty, and so this is about class tracking. If you need to assign a class. So when this is the bank feeds, and this will look familiar to some people. So this is just a sample, mahogany mugs, and you're going to drop down and do a class. This is fundraising. They have a gala, they have a program, whatever, and you know, you're going to drop it down and assign it. You're going to click this button and assign it to one of the classes and click add. And then that way it still goes to advertising, right? In the big general sense, when you run a profit and loss for the company, it goes to advertising. But then when you run a profit and loss by program, that expense is going to show up in and categorized to that program. You can always split these as well. If you're like, oh, I bought all this stuff and it's really, I bought enough for the two programs, you can simply open this up. See this little split button right here, open it up, and it'll give you another little thing here. And you can say, you know, $50 goes to this class and $50 goes, you know, to this class. So that's how the expenses get into the program. So this is a sample statement of activity. I call it a profit and loss, but in the nonprofit world, it's called a statement of activity. So, and this is just a nonprofit. So this is what they have in their admin. This is what they have in their fundraising. They had a gala, and then they had the total fundraising. Here's some program they have, community outreach, total program. I created this on my own. Because see, this is in the landscaping company. I created it so it would look more like what you guys needed. And then these are things that aren't specified. In other words, when we entered this, we didn't give it a class. And so your job is like the bookkeeper or the keeper of all the stuff is to run the statement of activity by class, and then click on this and say, oh yeah, that needs to go to the gala, or yeah, I don't know where that goes. Somebody just bought some copy paper and maybe that goes to, they call it admin here, overhead. So you would go in and look at these and say, do they need to be classed to a specific program? And then you would have your profit and loss by program. So this is the total revenue and these are total expenses. And like I said, a lot of times you're not going to have revenue in these, you're just going to have expenses, and then the revenue will be allocated later, because unless it's very specific that somebody's said, I want this to go to this one. Now the gala would be specific, right? People buy tickets, all that income goes in there, all the expenses go here. Bottom line, what did you make on the gala? you know. Bank feeds, I won't go into that today. We can do that later. There's some keyboard shortcuts. Sometimes people like to do the keyboard shortcuts. I'm kind of a mouse kind of gal, so I'm always doing the long way sometimes. But if you're in the date function, you can just hit T and it'll pop back to today, or you hit Y, it'll go back to the beginning of the year, or R at the end of the year. So that's kind of cool. And M is the beginning of the month and H is the end of the month. So if you're writing a check and you go to the date function, you don't have to be like back, and then try to open the calendar and click back to March.
Yeah, if folks have the opportunity to screenshot that, that's an excellent thing to have on your desk.
Yes, it would be. Because then once you start using it, it's like you'll use it. It'll be good.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a cool app with it, and this little plus sign is great. I use my app all the time. You say plus and you snap. This is called receipt capture. They just changed the name to snap a receipt. And so if you've got staff members and they're running out to the drugstore, they're buying something, just have them snap a receipt of it. And if they are a QuickBooks user, if they have authorization in your QuickBooks, it'll go straight to QuickBooks. If they're not an authorized user, we're going to set up an email for them to just hit forward to who, forward to, and it'll just give you an email. It'll be like, so-and-so nonprofit at intuit.net. And it will OCR it, do that optical character recognition, and it actually creates the expense for you, puts it in QuickBooks. And then when you go into QuickBooks the next day, you're like, oh, hey, there's some expenses. And hopefully they match the credit card or the debit card that she used to go down to, Walgreens to get something. And you're like, yeah, there's the credit card transaction. And there's the receipt, and they match together. And this is another thing I talked about for transparency is, if somebody, if somebody says, well, what did you buy at Walmart? Just curious, or Walgreens, just open that receipt is attached to that transaction. At the bottom, there's a little paper clip, and you would just open it up and say, oh, there it is. See, we bought some paper and blah, blah, blah. And then she wrote on there what program she was with, and then everybody's happy. It's transparent. Nobody's trying to hide anything. Nobody went to Walgreens and bought something for their family. Because in nonprofit world, everybody's trusting everybody. And I will tell you, we see more theft from nonprofits than we do anything. Probably nonprofits and doctor's office are the two major ones that we see theft from. Because after people work for a while, they see nobody's looking or paying attention, and they just start getting happy with the debit card or doing things. And it's sad, but it does happen. So receipt snapping is a great way, and you have to insist on a receipt for everything that somebody is spending. Everything that people are spending money out of your company, it needs to have a receipt, unless it's payroll or something like that. All right, so these are some different apps that connect. Y'all might have Kindful, the Neon CRM, donor receipts are good. Method, they have a donor method there. And the Find You, I have somebody with that. But Kindful, there's a lot in Chattanooga that use Kindful. We don't usually connect it with QBO because to me, it doesn't, I don't like the way it goes back and forth. It adds too much data into QBO. So we don't connect it, but you could use Kindful for like your, doing newsletters and advertising and things like that. So, all right. So I think that's going to be it. Oh, time tracking. If you don't time track, you should time track. I don't know why nonprofits don't do this, because it does give you some accountability. If you have employees working, especially now with COVID, where they're working at home and doing things, it is nice to time track. You're required by law to have a time tracking, a method of proving when someone worked. Anybody that's non-exempt, you're required by law, by the state of Tennessee. So if they come in to audit you, they audit nonprofits all the time. And 90% of nonprofits say, well, we just have her fill it out on the honor system. And all that employee has to do is say, well, I work 42 hours every week for a year, and you don't have any, you may not have any recourse. And then you'll end up paying them overtime and penalties because the Tennessee Department of Labor is pretty much going to take the employee side for everything. So nonprofits again are like, well, we trust everybody. We would never have that. Well, just believe me, it happens. There'll be that one person out of 20 years that's going to try take advantage of you. So there's just some new features, multilingual invoicing. You can also do recurring invoices. You can fetch your bank statements now right through QuickBooks Online. And those are some of the details that we help the nonprofits do, help them smooth out those processes so you don't have all this clunky, chunky stuff. And no more paper. You know, all this stuff is just going to be held electronically inside the accounting software. So you've got your merchant services, your bookkeeper, your CPA, the auditor, they're all logging in straight through QuickBooks Online. You're giving them access, everybody's logging in. If you have some type of point of sale, if you're selling things, that's going to sink in. We already talked about your receipts, how you're going to capture those and let those be transparent. Some of you have payroll, and QuickBooks has its own payroll as well, but you can always use the Paychex or ADP, whoever else you want to use. Your banking credit cards, they sink in. So that's kind of the big picture, is that, you know, QuickBooks does so much more than I think a lot of people realize. And it's a little daunting if you're not like an accountant or feel like you're, you know, schooled in that. So a lot of people will be like, well, I don't want to touch that. I'm afraid it's going to send off, you know, do something. And that's what we're here for, is to help you say, okay, what do you want to do? And we can say, no, don't do that. You're right, it's going to mess it up. Or yeah, let us help you and we'll show you the proper process. So, all right, that's it. Questions? I hope you guys have questions. Yes. So, yeah, what kind of questions do you have for us? Everybody feeling like they're just ready to tackle their books?
I'm thankful that we have Miss Sally at our school to do that.
Oh,
she is our superstar.
I enjoyed the presentation. We don't use QuickBooks here, but I used it for years at Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise. So I know there are it can do amazing things. You know, that lots of detail. It's just, but you know, I'm rusty on it because it's been like 3.5 years since I used it. But it is it can do some really amazing things.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. And when they came out with the nonprofit version about 1.5 years ago, I really like that for the nonprofit one. So $75 for a year is super cheap, and it does so much for you now that it's like almost a no-brainer. I think we moved about 20 nonprofits to it in the past year or two. I don't have any nonprofits still on desktop, because once we moved them there, they were like, it cut down on their bookkeeping more than 50%. So if they had a full-time bookkeeper or a full-time office admin, it immediately went to 20 hours a week, because it does it for you if you set it up right, you know. And they can spend their time.
Set it up.
Yeah, and they can spend their time on fundraising and doing the programs, and not just sitting here managing data. I mean, who wants to just eat up money from a nonprofit just paying somebody to enter stuff? You know, that's my philosophy.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. What else you guys have? Any other questions? Well, if you're interested in any training, you know, I always tell people we have little 4-hour training packages, and we can do it in little bits with you. We do it online like this and share your file, and we can go in the file and kind of say, well, here's some tips and ideas of how to do things, and then give you some homework, and then come back later, and you can just call us anytime and we'll show you how to properly set up or properly book things. If you're, especially now when you're trying to maybe look at the whole year, and you realize that, well, maybe I do need to sort by program, because if not, you're going to have to pay a CPA to do it, and they're going to be a whole lot more expensive than, you know, what you and I could do together. And you would rather, you know, learn how to do it, learn how to do the program tracking and the class tracking, rather than giving it to the CPA and having them ask you, well, I need this broken down by program, and you're all like scrambling on spreadsheets and stuff. No need to do that. Just, you know, just do it in QuickBooks. It's super easy.
Yeah, I just want to say hello. Thank you so much for this. Very, very, very helpful. So.
Oh, good. You're ready to go, huh, Flo?
I am. I did not get the math gene from my father, who was a CPA. So.
Oh.
I think it's a language that I do not speak, but I'm willing to learn.
I hear you. I know what you mean. All right. Well, anything else? Any other questions? People pay good money to ask me questions, guys. Come on. I don't mind.
Does Square integrate with this?
Yes, it does. Square
It does.
integrates really nicely with it. Some people, we find that if you use Square, there's two ways that it integrates. If you use Square a lot, like you're you have more than 20 transactions a day, you're going to want to not sync it, and you're going to want to do a daily or weekly summary, because doing every single day is a lot. I mean, it's just more to accept. So, but if you're just doing onesie twosies here and there, it syncs very nicely. Just
Great.
pulls right in data, the detail. It gives the fees and the income where they need to go. It divides them up.
What about like Facebook donations or online giving or those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, don't they just go right into your bank feed? They just get deposited right into your
Got it.
bank.
Okay, great. Perfect. You're right. They do.
Yeah, they just go right into your bank. I just make everything funnel into that bank, and that's like the king. It's like if it happened at the bank, we're recording it in QuickBooks. Now, how do we record it?
Well, this has been awesome.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Well, hopefully we can help you out. But Arts Build is wanting everybody to be, just have the data and the information you need to really, step it up this year. And so, happy to help you out in any way we can. So,
Thank you, Archbuild.
all righty. All right. Well, I'm sorry we didn't have more people. I thought a lot of people would come to this today. I thought I'd have like 20 people or something, but
I think people watch it like later on, probably. When they, 'cause I think
hopefully.
it's very helpful.
Great. All right. If no more questions, last chance. All right. Thanks so much, everybody.